Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes from June 19, 2019 is the first thing on the agenda. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. You're doing that on purpose, Marion, I know. Review the total project budget, old business.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. We have incorporated all of the various changes that we went through at the last building committee. If you want to sort of look very quickly, the total project budget that we've come up with is $60,922,761. If you look on it's the second page of our handout, we'll go through sort of the VE items. The boardwalk, which was a $108,000 item, has been taken out of the cost estimate. The irrigation fields was not selected. That has been taken out of the cost estimate. The VE number 3, the automatic gate at the entrance was not accepted and has remained in the budget. V4, the overhead operating door, we've only took one of the two out of the project for a deduct of $12,000. And then the other VE items, changing lockers from plastic to metal, the mass notification system, the deletion of the benches and planters at the roof classroom, and the reduction of the building area, all were not accepted and remain within the project budget. On the alternates, we now have 3 alternates that are outside of the total project budget. They are alternate number 1, which is an 81 kW photovoltaic system. Alternate number 2 is sports lighting at the turf field. And alternate number 3, which is a toilets facilities at the fields. Those 3 alternates total $1,153,731. And the committee is going to need to vote on the order of these alternates. This is sort of based on my understanding out of them. If there's any changes you want to make, the toilet facilities number 2 and sports lighting number 3, that is up to the committee to make. You want to do that at the end?
Yeah, please.
Okay. The other alternates, the rainwater irrigation was not accepted. The artificial turf field is now in the base budget and is included in the site costs. The expansion of the gym is now included in the base budget and is included in the building cost. The maintenance shed and solar canopies were both not accepted and is not in the budget at all. And the repaving of the entrance driveway is in the base budget. If you look at the reconciliation budget, you'll see that under exterior enclosures, I'm showing an increase in increased gym by the 773 square feet. That's an additional cost of $204,774. So that is now in the overall shell cost of the building. Under site work, under G20, you'll see 2 added lines. One is additional artificial spelling error, turf field for $897,187. And repaving of the entrance drive for $701,859. You'll notice those are a bit lower than what we quoted last month. That's because we took the markup out of them, because if you look below, we put the markup back in below the line. The estimates that we gave you as alternates included markup. So that's why you'll find those as a lower value than what we did last month. The alternates that we are showing do include markup. That's why sports lighting is now a $543,000 line item. While when it was combined, it was a little hard to parse out, but we had the turf field with lighting, which was $1.7 million last week. So again, going through the estimates, we come with a total construction cost, including the alternates, or those scope items that were alternates are now part of the base scope, as $49,269,791. Those we've plugged into the MSBA spreadsheet, and they come out with a total ineligible of $18,210,596. And then we've come to the MSBA share, because you subtract the 18.2 million out of the 60.9 million, you come to a sort of a base MSBA share of 24,546,184. The difference is in the contingency amount. Total project contingency is 2.7 million. If they participate in all of it, then you'd get the 25 million. If they don't participate in any of it, that's the 24.5 million. And the town share is basically the 60.9 million minus what the MSBA is going to provide as a grant amount. So the town share is between 35.9 and 36.3.
Now you need a vote.
And we knew. Yes. Any questions? Yes.
Rules for the contingency share the same as they are for the building share? In other words, if we need to spend contingency money on site work, they participate in zero?
Yes,
the same set
because
of
we've
rules?
already reached the cap. Honestly, there's not a lot that the MSBA participates in change orders or in other contingencies, unless it's a program increase that they're agreeing to. So normally, we don't see a lot of participation from the MSBA in contingencies.
estimates that were selected total up to 120,000, but the letter says they total up to 130. Is that, am I missing something, or if that is an error, was the error just on the memo, or did it carry over into the spreadsheets?
Which two items?
It was 120,
Should be-
120.
Yeah.
It didn't show, it says 130 on the memo, but it's 120 in the spreadsheet.
Does it say 130 in the memo?
Page 23.
It's 120.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's 120.
108 and 12 together.
Yeah.
120.
Right, I agree. I'm just wondering if the 130 error is just on the memo, or is it, are we sure it's not in the spreadsheet? as
Yeah,
well?
no, yeah, the 120 is in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, and if you look at the detail above, it was a typo, obviously, because if you look at the VE1 and the VE4 description, it actually sums up to 120. So in those two descriptions, it was just a typo below is 130.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out where it would be in the multiple numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, there are a lot of numbers.
It is 120.
One thing I was thinking about is maybe where it's listed as artificial turf baseball field, maybe we're being a little inaccurate with the way we're saying that. That, when you see artificial turf baseball field, I think it's only to be used for baseball. So I'm thinking maybe we should talk about what we want that to be worded as going forward.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say something. I got a call this afternoon from a friend of mine asking me if I read Facebook this week, of which I do not do. But apparently there's been a lot of discussion about our project on Facebook, and it's urging people to get more involved with this committee, because apparently they feel that we've added a lot of extras, which has driven the cost up substantially. We've been urging people to come to this meeting for the better part of 2 years, so I wish they had done it right from the beginning. However, there's a feeling that they want money spent more on education and less on sports. And they singled in particularly on what you're talking about, the $1.7 million for the turf. Apparently, there's a feeling that that's not going to fly. Now, whether or not it is, I don't know, but I'm telling you what they're passing around on Facebook. But there's a lot of concern out there. So I think we got to keep that in mind.
To Mr. Tuccio's point, I think it should, it's not the baseball field that needs to be artificial, it's the rectangular multi-purpose field that needs to be artificial if we're gonna allow people to use the field continuously, which is the problems that we have in town. So yeah, I think it should be just sports field complex, maybe, something generic.
So Peter, if I'm correct, you can put a high school varsity soccer field on that field?
It is exactly what was recommended by the study, master plan study that was planned for Elmwood Street. It is the same plan, basically. It's providing the same provisions.
I just think it's important that we get out to the community what can actually be played on that field. As the way, if you're reading this now, it seems exactly what Mr. Plant just said. It's a $1.6 million baseball field. And in actuality, when you look at the cost of it based on the alternatives, and then what's in the budget, correct me if I'm wrong, it's $897,000 versus 1.6, so that's half the cost. But also, I think we need to really put the message out there that it's not just a baseball field.
In the T2 memo, it does say baseball field and multi-purpose field, so.
Well, I think Mike had a good point at the last meeting too, explaining how the drainage is such that you can't use the fields half the time anyway. So this is a way to circumvent that, but I don't think people realize that. And I think that's a legitimate point, you know?
But it's not just, through the chair, it's not just the high school sports. It's every town sports program that exists is going to benefit from this. And not just sports. I mean, anybody who's out for a jog, or any community member that regularly uses this track, or any athletic fields or public space is going to benefit from this. So to say it's just sports programs that will benefit from it is a little short-sighted in my opinion. True, that's the majority, but I think the entire town can benefit from the space.
We discussed it last time where taking the lighting out makes a big difference in the budget. That needs to be explained. But it's also, we determined as a committee that it's a need for the school as well as for the community. And we need to explain those reasons why and convince the public that it's a need as well. Hopefully we'll, now that the numbers have been published or will be published, that's going to provoke more people to get involved and provoke some of those conversations. My opinion is, you know, we met for 4 hours last week and talked about this at length. I don't think it should change our position with all those discussions last week because of someone's post on Facebook.
Mr. Chair, I think I'd like to add, if I weren't a community member, if I were just a community member and I didn't serve on this board, I would have had the same concern. And I think the title of the fields is important because it lets us know as a community exactly what it is that we'd be getting. And then the domino effect of if something happens at the high school, the domino effect of what that does for us as a community. Because if the high school project goes through as well, it allows the community so much more than we're even typically used to. But I also strongly believe that after all the time we spent here last week as a group, that we just started understanding the impact that that will have on not only the schools but the community. And I think that we at this committee, or at this meeting also, for the first time understood the impact that would have on our students or our future students for Shaw. So I do believe that we can get that out there and we can change that message and hopefully use the same avenue as to where the conversation is taking place now.
Anyone else? We did beat this to death last week. No question about that. I mean, I had 2 kids and 6 grandkids go through this school. I certainly want the kids in the future to get all the benefit they can out of this. So I'm for it, but we're going to have to convince a lot of people to be for it. Anyone else have any? Ready to vote? We're not staying here 4 hours tonight, I can guarantee you that. I put in my time for the week.
So through the chair, are you looking for a motion to accept the total budget project as written for the, which amount are we looking at here? Because I know that that needs to be
I
set for
think-
purposes. of
Rick, have you got
minutes.
that?
I can read that, Mr.
Yeah, okay, I think Rick's got it.
Okay. So I move that the Shaw School Building Committee vote to approve the total project budget of $60,922,761 and authorize the submission of the schematic design for the new Shaw Elementary School project to the MSBA.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous.
I did.
She said it quietly. She was quiet.
Second.
Okay. That's the only vote you need, right?
The alternates. The order of the alternates.
Oh, okay.
Through the chair.
Jen?
Well, I think alternate number 1 as listed should be priority number 1. That's the one that will give us a payback. And then if I had my preferences, I would prefer to see restroom facilities before lights, but that's my preference.
Anyone else have any other ideas? Kevin?
These get accepted in terms of, depending on how far we fall below budget, right?
Yeah.
I mean, does it make sense just to push the cheaper ones to the top? I mean, what are the odds that we're gonna be $500,000 below budget? That's the only way the lighting gets considered. And if lighting, for example, was number 1 and we came in 200 or 300 below, what happens? It just goes to number 2, or?
No, you have to take them on order. If you
So
can't
do we wanna
afford
put-
number 1, then you can't take any of the alternates. But you want to still take them in the priority in which you want them.
After we vote it, that's it. Right.
No, we're going to submit this to the MSBA. I think before we go out to bid, we can revisit it. The MSBA just wants to know which ones you're looking at and what your priorities are. But if the committee and the town want to change that those listings later, it can happen. We can have a conversation with the MSBA, and it won't be a problem.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question about the toilet facilities at the fields and the cost. It sounds to me like $300,000 for what could essentially amount to a set of bathrooms and maybe a place to take tickets and offer concessions is a large amount of money. And I'm curious how they came up with that estimate of a build.
Well, we showed you 2 floor plans last week. It was based on those floor plans and some assumptions, prevailing wage, and also getting utilities to that location. So,
And it has to have heat, it's got to meet code. Public construction is not cheap. It's not like building a house. The square footage is small, but it's still going to be.
yeah.
No,
yeah.
I agree.
It's pretty absorbent, in my opinion. And I'm wondering if, so me looking at that as a taxpayer, I'm thinking, I'm not paying $300,000 for toilets. Like, that seems like a ton of money for that spot. And I'm just wondering how we can come to grips with that and ask people to vote on this. When for whatever reason, I think it can be done way less expensive than that, and to put a number in front of people that's reasonable, that I would consider reasonable.
Well, the first point to make is it's not part of the budget, so it's not something that the town will be voting on as part of the budget.
Right, but this is what makes me question our budgetary process. So when I'm looking at this as a town's member and saying, well, you're paying $300,000 for toilets, what else is in the school that I don't know about that is costing all this other money? So when you line item it like this and you see the amount that you're spending for toilets, it seems high, in my opinion.
This is based on the estimates from people that are very knowledgeable in the trade on what things do cost. Public construction is expensive. It's unless you really are in it for, and we'll be very transparent with all the costs and what construction is and what's the markups, and the fact that this building is not just a little toilet facility. It still needs to meet code. It's got to be heated. It's going to have a fire alarm. It's a public building. It's a small comfort station, but it's got to meet all the codes and everything else of any other public building, and it's expensive. It's like 350 square feet. So
It's assumed to be a durable masonry construction, similar to the building, and all of that.
yeah, no, I don't have the breakdown. Yeah, the PM&C gave us an estimate for it.
One clarification, Peter, you mentioned the utilities. I thought the stub up and routing of utilities was included in the base, and then this was just putting a building on it? Okay. Because if it doesn't happen, we still have the opportunity to build it in the future.
To stub it up in the future, yes.
And with an alternate, you know, the cost is what the contractor will put in as a bid price for that particular alternate. So it is what it is. But as David said, public construction, if you look at the square foot cost of the school compared to what a square foot cost of a spec house might be in central Mass today, it's a very different thing you're talking about. It's just different.
Right, no, and I understand that, and I don't expect that we're gonna get a general contractor that's gonna come and build our school without the expertise of building a school, but I do know that there are contractors out there that will look at this and say, are you kidding me? $300,000? And so, and I'm not suggesting that we're not transparent, because I believe we are. Clearly we are, because every single number that you wanna look at is in front of us tonight, and I can't make heads or tails of it. But just the size of the number, and it's definitely a concern for me. If we're asking people to vote on this as a separate item, or I'm sorry, if it comes under budget, that's what we're gonna go with, it seems like a lot of money to me. That's just the point I wanted to make.
Well, again, if it comes under budget, it's an item that you'll have a real number from a bid, and it isn't part of the budget now. It's not part of what you're asking the town to borrow now to purchase. It's part of the vote.
Just if I could offer, you will also see what the market tells you this is worth on bid day. It'll be crystal clear. If we have 4 bidders, you'll see 4 bidders give you 4 prices for this very alternate. So that'll be confirmation that is the right number. But if it's a perception thing, if it's just because of this one item, people get shaky legs on the rest of the project, that is something you might want to consider as a committee. It's not just that public construction is expensive, it's just, it's a little self-contained, tiny little postage stamp of a building off on its own, and it just requires, it's got 4 sides, a roof, foundation, it's got everything, but there's not enough building to spread the cost out on. So the premium for this tiny little building is disproportionate. It's roughly double what the rest of the project is going to cost on a cost per square foot basis. It's high. It's high, but it's just because of the unique nature of this little pod. So. But again, if it's a perception thing, if people look at that and say, well, gosh, you know, if what we're paying here, the premium we're paying here is the same as what we're going to be paying on the big building, it's something that the committee should think about. You know, if everybody in the town thinks the way that you do, and it causes shaky legs, it is something to take a look at. If that's the piece of the project, that little piece that's an add-on is the part that the lens through which people in this community are going to view the rest of the project. It's something to consider.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So I think if we're talking about how this project is going to benefit not just our students, but the community as a whole, we heard from members of the Booster Club and athletics in previous meetings, as well as at school committee meetings, about how enhancing our facilities would allow for us to have more of the bigger events here. Both Elmwood and Shaw, when you're using their fields, you're using a portable toilet or wishing and hoping that the Elmwood Street School is open so you could sneak in to use the bathroom. It's New England, we're going to play soccer and it's going to be cold. So I think if we're talking about also supporting the community, yes, Mike, I agree with you, it's a hefty price tag, but I think the long-term benefit is going to outweigh this immediate cost right now.
So, Mr. Chair, I think also to address what both of you have said, the other part is this isn't something that's a necessity for the schools, which is why it's an alternate. Otherwise, we would have asked for it to be a part of our budget, and it would have raised our budget, and we're not doing that as a committee. But at the same token, and in fact, when we're looking at, Jen, where you said, where does it fall in number of alternates, I would agree with you that it would be second, because at the end of the day, it still saves the school, because we don't have people going into the school or having to get portables to be outside on the fields, which will probably eventually be done anyway. but to keep that, people from going the entire length of the school, that will help the school in the long run.
Is that, again, to get to one of the points you brought up about the perception of this, if people look at the cost of this for the postage size stamp building, if it's costing this much, they're gonna question a lot more about the larger project as well. You might want to consider in terms of selling this to the community, David pointed out, if people want to question what the committee's doing or what the construction architects are doing when they're pricing something that's high, it's good to point out that you said this is an estimate derived by an independent or two independent estimating firms, assuming competitive environment. It just goes to show that from an independent perspective, this is what it costs. So I agree. People could look at that and say, that's a lot. What are you guys doing up there? But if an independent estimating firms are saying this is what the going rate is for these things, and something like this is not going to get cheaper next year or the year after. So fact is, it is what it is. If you ever want to have this type of facility on the field, that's what it's going to cost you at least, ballpark. So it's good. Splash cold water in the face. If that's just to let people know that's what it costs, and it's not.
I could add too on alternates. I think Joe spoke to this a little bit. I've had projects where the three low bids were $150,000 apart from each other in a very competitive environment. Contractors will bid these alternates sometimes very aggressively to get the job if they really want the job. So somebody might just put a low ball number on that because they hope that you'll take that, and it'll put them in that position when there's that small number between the general bids. Because once you select the alternates, the apparent low bidder could change because you've added that scope, and the number is tallied on the total project of the base bid and the alternates. And it sometimes decides the bidder.
I'm satisfied. I just wanted to bring that up as a point to share of a concern of mine. I assume with the head nods that I've seen across the committee table that there are other people that feel the same way. So.
We work with the state park system designing comfort stations, and a recent one we did in the what's the park in Milton off the highway? Houghton Pond. It was larger than this, but it was $900,000, and it had 3 toilets in each bathroom. It was a state comfort station, state park comfort station. So it's
Michael. I have just a question on inclusion or not. Talking about the sports lighting, it's not part of the main budget for the school. It's on the alternate. If that wasn't here, the question that might be posed to the taxpayers in Millbury about overall fix or restoration of our overall sports complex in Millbury, would that be part of that question? Would sports lighting at Elmwood be part of the overall program for fixing the high school and everything? I see it here as an alternative. If it was also going to be part of the question, the package that's going to be asked for upgrade of sports facilities, is that a conflict? Meaning people might see it 2 places. And so meaning if it's going to be part of the overall restoration of the sports complex for Millbury, should it even be on our alternate list, because taxpayers are going to be asked for that in a separate question?
I think the separate question deals only with the field, excuse me, the field construction here at the high school.
That's fine. I just want to make sure it wasn't going to show up in 2 places.
Right. And the superintendent and I were talking earlier, so there's lots of moving pieces. If the high school small project even makes it to the ballot, because the school committee still has to hear and okay that warrant. So if that project actually does go to the ballot, if that's accepted, we can always convert the Shaw School back to a regular grass field, right? That was my question last week. We can dial that back.
You can change that.
Yeah.
You can reduce the scope.
which would, right.
In terms of.
Provided we have to do that after the project gets funded. Now that this is the
Right,
money.
exactly.
Okay.
No,
But,
I-
yeah, we can,
But you can dial that back. You can make that decision after, if tiny project gets accepted and big project gets accepted, you can dial back big project based on, the town needs at least one artificial rectangular surface. And that's why I think we have asked that we consider an artificial rectangular surface at the Shaw School. Because that's, the rectangular sports are the sports that kill the fields, and that's where the most use comes in, the soccer and the football. Because if you have that artificial surface, be it here or be it at Shaw, you can move Pop Warner football off of Windle. You can play all the soccer games you want. You can play a soccer game and a football game alternately. And so you see what I mean? But if the little project doesn't get support from the school committee to go on to that ballot, if the school committee says, hey, wait a second, we're already asking for a school, maybe we need to wait 2 years to retool the high school, right? You still want an artificial, you would want an artificial surface at Shaw because that would start to alleviate your field problems. But if the small project goes through, and I feel so, it's confounding us. If the small project goes through and you can put an artificial field in the middle of a track, then you've got your artificial rectangular field, and you don't need a turf field at the Shaw School. Do you see what I mean? Or you need a turf field, you don't need an artificial turf field.
Well, at Shaw, you're going to have a rectangular that you can play baseball or soccer on, okay? You're going to have that. The artificial surface at Shaw is there primarily because Shaw Middle School needs it, okay? The rest of the town gets to use it, but it was decided it's a need for the school, okay? So irrespective of whether or not the town decides or doesn't decide, or a question gets asked for overall sports complex, I don't understand why at any time the turf, if this project is approved by the town, whether we would ever rip out the turf field from this project.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that this project includes a baseball field that has an outfield that contains a full-size soccer field or rectangular sports field, right? Whether it's grass or artificial. That's what the Shaw School needs. It needs that field. So where am I going with this? If it's artificial, then the pressure on all the rest of the field starts to let up, because then all the rest of the community that needs fields can play on that artificial surface till the cows come home. Whereas now we only have a set number of fields, and we allow everybody to use them, and they're in disrepair because they never rest. If the small project at the high school goes through, that square field, rectangular field inside the track would be artificial. All I'm saying is that there will always be a field at Shaw. It doesn't necessarily have to be artificial if the high school field becomes artificial.
That's not the decision that was made.
No, I know, no, but that was the question I asked last week. We've made this decision that the Shaw School should be artificial surface, and that's what's in the $60 million budget for Shaw.
Because the town as a whole wears on the field. If it was just the Shaw students who were going to be using the field exclusively, we're not saying that Shaw students 3 to 6 need an artificial field. It's because the town has a need for the fields that it's assumed they're going to be using these fields, and for that reason.
Well, that's not what I understood last week. I understood that the turf field for the students at Shaw would be a much better benefit than a regular grass field because of the fact the limited areas where they get a chance to play, and an artificial surface would give them more opportunity to play there for a lot longer periods during the year. So I thought the reason that it was decided it was more of a need than a want. So it was a need for Shaw. The rest of the benefit to the town and the high school and everybody else that might use it is there, like Mike articulated. But in my mind, if the students at Shaw didn't need the artificial surface, okay, I wouldn't necessarily be agreeable that we should have voted for a turf field. So to me, the turf field is a need for the students, and everybody else gets the benefit, but they're not the primary reason. So I just misunderstood why at some point in time, if another project is approved, why we would then go back and say, well, we really don't need the turf field at Shaw. I don't understand how we would ever get, how that decision would ever be made. I mean,
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that. Mike, I know that was based on a comment that I made. And, but the reason was I made that comment based on the assumption that we share the fields with the town. Because to me, it seems like it's a non-negotiable that would ever change. Because I think it would be disappointing to the town if we built a brand-new building, we had fields, and then we said you have no access to the fields because we don't have turf. Because then the response would have been, then why didn't you do that? Because we count on using the Shaw fields throughout the school year. So if only Shaw students were to use the field, we wouldn't have a need for artificial turf. However, that's not our reality. Our reality is that our fields are open to the town all year, and that would be the need for it. So I think you're right in that we wouldn't, but then we'd be telling the town they can't use the fields because we don't have artificial, and that just wouldn't go over well. So from the school perspective, I saw the domino effect would be more the students can't use it because now the school needs it, the towns need it, and we'd be third on the list. So we'd be strongly suggesting go for the artificial turf so that we're guaranteed to use our fields. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And through the chair, to follow up on your point, Miriam, the students at Shaw are the same students that play the soccer, are the same students that play the baseball, that will be using the field, maybe not at recess, but they will be on Saturday afternoon and on Sunday mornings when they come to play their game. So you're right. You're 100% right. And Mrs. Tufsky, you're 100% right. So you're both right. Good job.
No, it can't be. It doesn't work that way.
Mr. Chairman, well, you brought up, I'd like to just go back to the social media aspect of it, because of the fact that, just what we discussed over the last few minutes, driving the overall need for what the Shaw students need in that field, what the rest of the town needs in that field, et cetera. This explanation has to get out to the public, because if the public hears this explanation, they shouldn't have any trouble with turf fields.
Right.
Okay? So we have to figure out how to get, instead of social media driving the answer, we have to drive social media somehow, so.
I'll have to open it. I swore when I retired I'd be done. And then somebody talked me into this. I don't know who that was.
You got lunch out of it.
Yeah, I did.
So I'm comfortable with it.
But I agree with you. I think if people truly understand the whole town's gonna use it, I think that'll make the difference. But that's not getting out there yet, for sure. We gotta get that out there. Somehow. But we're doing our best, from what I can see.
It's on the agenda coming up.
That's right. Anyone else on this subject? Alternatives. You want to go with Jen's alternatives? Which were, alternative 1 is 1, alternative 3 is 2, and alternative 2 is 3, right?
I like that idea.
I need a second to Jen's motion.
I'll give Jen a second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Those are the votes you need? They are. Okay. Outreach program update. By the way, whoever put the video on was terrific. That video was terrific. Yeah, that's another thing the public's gonna see. That was good.
I watched it today, I couldn't hear Superintendent Myers' voice when I ran it, though.
I didn't hear that either.
I didn't hear.
Recorded that separately in the studio in Los Angeles, that's on the way.
The video was good, though. It was good.
It was. I kept turning the volume up, I couldn't hear.
Yeah, you could, I couldn't either. I tried twice this afternoon. Who did the video?
We did.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But we should do a talk over here.
Mr. Chair, so for the folks at home, everything that's been handed out tonight that we voted on, as well as those movie renditions, are on the website now. That's what you're referring to. So if you go to our website, which I just pulled up here, under the Shaw webpage, if you go down to the bottom, you can see the interior and the exterior video that T2 put together.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific. I think people really like that
Right.
too. And it's good to see something, I think, before you vote on it.
After the meeting last week, Mr. Chair, Mike O'Connor mentioned that Northbridge Public Schools on their website, they have a similar video with a voiceover that explains all these details that we've been discussing, basically the rationale behind every decision. And after watching that video, you know exactly how you want to vote, because all of your questions have been answered through that video.
Right.
And I think that's a far more effective way to reach out to voters than to hold public forums. Because if we can put that on our website and push it out through social media, we'll get the word out.
Yeah, we're just not getting the people at the public forums that I thought we would. Well, I'm not surprised, because it's hard to get people out these days for anything, include the town meeting, although I think this will be an exception to the rule, personally.
So is the voiceover that is gonna be added to the video that's on there now is gonna accomplish that?
That's what we hope. We'll use Northbridge as a template. But a lot of these concerns that have been raised in the past 2 years about the rationale behind our choices. And tonight, there've been a few things that we've talked about that we've said, if only the public were here to listen to it. So that information would be in the voiceover, so they could understand the why behind a lot of the choices.
Certainly the video you produced for the current condition of the existing school
Yes.
was beneficial getting the initial approval, I believe. Yeah.
Rick, we didn't hear much on tax numbers yet, right?
I do have a report on that.
Oh, yeah?
Sure, do you want me to
Yeah,
take
I
that
do.
now? Okay.
I think that would be good. and
All right.
beneficial.
So we haven't talked about that yet, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity and to go over it. So I've talked to Andrew Vanny, our finance director, and I've done a little research myself, and some other folks have helped me out. So I have plugged in the number you just voted on tonight, the town share of $35,919,780, to see what that would look like for the taxes. Now, there's two ways that we can finance something like that as a town. Most of the time, it's going to be a 30-year loan, and right now, we plugged in 3.75% interest rate. But the two different ways would be level payments, which would be like a conventional mortgage you have on your home. So it'd be the same payment on your home, it's every month, it'd be the same payment every year for the town. The other option, and this would be on the town side to determine that, would be level principal, which would mean the payment is variable and the interest would be higher at the beginning and obviously lower at the end. So that's a town decision, so that affects it a little bit. So in other words, the payments would be higher at the beginning and lower at the end. I've taken a look at what a conventional mortgage for the town would look like, and for the 35 million spread over 30 years, that's $2,014,655 per year, based on, again, 30 years at 3 3/4. So that $2 million would be the obligation per year the town would need to have in their budget. That comes out to about $1.21 per thousand for the average homeowner. So again, if Mr. Vanny was talking about the other way, and I think that saves money, he was talking about if you balloon it at the front and pay less at the end, that would be a little bit more per thousand at the beginning, be about the same at year 15 as a conventional mortgage, and then it would be less at the end. So it would be a little bit of a variable there. But if you're doing like many communities do, the same amount each year, about $2 million, it's $1.21 per thousand. And just as a point of information, we do have some projects coming off the books in years to come, and it's a little bit after this project would probably go on the books, but, you know, there's some sewer work that will be paid off the year 2024. And then there's some school work, some more sewer tie-ins, and Blackstone Valley Tech work that will be paid off in 2025. So the total of those two things, which again, that's after this could potentially start, but that's about 820,000 per year that would be potentially coming off the books, so that would reduce the $2 million. But of course, I wanted to look at this in isolation, so that would be $2 million per year. So, and I don't have it yet, Mr. Chair, but I'll put this information on the website also, so people can take a look at that. Good. All right.
Okay. You gentlemen have anything else? You're all set? Peter, you're all set?
One thing, Mr.
Rob.
Chair. So, and maybe Mr. O'Connor can answer this, but is my understanding that if this goes to town meeting, the finance committee is going to have to make a recommendation on this? Is that part of the process? I know at regular town meeting, every article has a recommendation by the finance committee. So do we need to go in front of the finance committee and
I think
you know,
what we
present
should
this,
do-
or well, how, what's that process?
I think what we should do is on this July 23rd meeting with the selectmen, we should probably invite the finance committee.
That's a great idea.
So that they can hear the presentation. That sound reasonable? And do it all at once.
And I'm sure, like all the other budget and articles that the finance committee reviews for town meeting, they're gonna
Make a
probably go through
recommendation.
this, and they're gonna ask
Right,
some more detailed questions, but,
right.
um,
Then we can go back before them.
yeah.
So through Mr. Chair, so then I'll look at Donna now. So then I think the meeting will definitely be here. We'll ask the select board if we can meet here maybe, Mr. Myers, instead of trying to fit in the select board conference room. Because if we have all those boards together, I don't think we can fit everybody in there. Okay,
I think it makes sense to have everybody at once.
yeah.
And we can get the questions all torn apart at one time. We'll let Mike talk with the finance committee, because he's had plenty of experience along with Kevin.
Check's up, so welcome.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to bring up? We all set?
One last
Kate.
question. The Board of Selectmen meeting on July 23rd, would you like all of us from the committee to be there, kind of a united front, or is there a select group?
Oh, I think we should all be there. Agreed? We're in this thing together, we might as well sink or swim together, right?
Agreed.
I also think when the audience looks around at the committee and sees the different perspectives that have vetted these ideas all along, I think that'll bring more credibility
I
to
do too.
the plan.
And it wasn't just a short-term thing
Yeah.
either, it's been a long process, but it's supposed to be a long process. But I agree, I think when people see how many people put a lot of time in,
Not
It should.
being a town resident, what time is the Board of Selectmen?
their meeting is at 7, but I don't know, we'll have to find out when we're gonna be on the agenda.
Okay,
Right?
Right.
thank
It's a
you.
regular meeting night, isn't it?
Regular meeting.
We'll let you know. We don't have another meeting before this, do we? This is it, right?
Maybe coming. But you can do that on the 23rd.
The 23rd would be on. Okay.
Yeah, if you just want to do a quick
Have to
meeting.
be submitted with the
Doing the
submission, right?
minutes, yeah. we
They
can
they
do-
could follow, right?
Well, if we can get a draft for this meeting, we'll put that with the submission. It's not usual that we can submit certified minutes,
Later,
but
yeah.
we can submit them later. But if you want to do a committee meeting on the 23rd, we can do a quick vote to certify these minutes so that we can get them into the MSBA. Does
they'll want them before August.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Did you say their meeting is at 6, or we should ask them to meet
No.
at 6:30?
No, what I'm saying is the select board meets at
7.
7.
Yep,
I think this committee should meet
6:30.
6:30.
Yeah, I agree, before the meeting. And then we can talk about what we're going to present.
And if we can't meet here, we can always use
Meet in
a
another room.
classroom.
Right. Okay, everybody all right with that? I need a motion to go out.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, all those in favor, all those opposed, unanimous. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening.